Welcome back to the Take a Chance on You podcast, hosted by me, Alexandra Forsyth. So excited to be coming to you today. I'm going to be giving a debrief of the podcast show that took place in London. Let's dive in. There were so many talks that I wanted to go to. It was split up into different stages. We had the origin stage, creator stage, business indie stage. There were fantastic platforms and podcasting solutions exhibiting throughout the event. For me to immerse myself into this industry, podcasting is very much evolving at a rapid pace. The buzzword throughout the show was video and how we can incorporate video into our podcast journey. Up until now, the emphasis has really been on audio the last couple of years, but shifting towards video. So I thought that was really exciting in terms of hearing the trends from some of the major platforms such as YouTube, Spotify and Apple talking about how to really utilize this going forward and how to make your content stand out and how you can show up as a content creator, as a podcaster as well. It doesn't matter what stage you're at. I think the main takeaway for me with this show was that you can be at any stage of your journey and there's somebody there to help you on your way. There's a community and it really does feel like a fantastic environment to get involved in. That's really uplifted me just saying that. I did pick up on a few key topics and pointers that I wanted to share today. Storytelling, video and future mindset. Storytelling, I think, will always remain a key part of podcasting, generally media, entertainment, content creation, social media, online, offline community. I think storytelling just naturally has such an emphasis, building that narrative, building that arc and figuring out exactly what you want to do going forward and how you want to bring your community along with you on this journey. Future mindset. I wrote an article for the Podcasting Today media last month in April. And within that article, I spoke about live events community and where we're going in terms of the industry, experimental concepts. I think not spoken about enough, cross media. As I said, media, entertainment, sports, gaming, all intersecting into one, mobile apps, social media, in-person community-driven experiences, all of that merges very well together. The industry is very much evolving. This is a key theme that came out of the show. We're all trying to navigate collaboration. We're all trying to navigate brand partnership, sponsorship, and where we want to take our podcasting to the next level. Very exciting, but also a lot to think about in terms of the industry. As I say, the talks were split up on different stages. Creator stage, they gave a download 101. If you want to start your podcast, this is what you can do. They also had an international lounge and an international stage, which really focused on across the pond podcasters, production, researchers, analysts coming over to talk about what's happening in the US, what's happening in Canada, Australia, being able to meet so many podcasters and so many people in the industry. I can't emphasize enough, if you can, anyone listening who couldn't make it to the podcast show, but you want to be a part of this, they are already looking at 2027. There are a couple of other events in the podcast space, which I am going to link in the resource section. There's Podfest taking place in September, Podcast Movement, if you are across the pond in New York, that's also taking place in September. If you can make it over there, I would really recommend it. What else is happening? There's a couple of other podcast events taking place, networking events, very much in London, meetups as well. There are also live events where you can go and watch other podcasters talk about their shows. So always be on the lookout for ways that you can collaborate with others, show up, be on their podcast, but also meet people, because it really is a big part of the show for me, is being around others in this space and learning from them. The UK Podcast Consumer Report 2026, big emphasis on video, but also a big emphasis on the casual consumer. So adaptability is key now in podcasting. If somebody's going for a walk, driving their car, picking their children up from school, being able to listen to that podcast on the go, have it on in the background. The same for video. There is a proportion of listeners for podcasts who have the video on in the background. but also are tuning in more to video as well as audio, using video as a discovery tool to then listen to audio podcast, which I thought was just fascinating. It also made me reflect on my own mission as a podcaster myself, bringing the audience along with you on that journey. You're telling a story, you want the listeners to lean in to that story and the way you're telling it. Also with the guests, you want to take them on the journey with you as well and be active participants. How to tune in. So public relations, PR, pitching yourself to the media, making sure your podcast aligns with the media outlet that you want to be featured by. If you're launching a podcast and you want to get more exposure, if you're on your way, put it out there to a new audience and really build that community over time. Just make sure that whoever you're pitching to in terms of that media, it aligns well with where you're going. As an avid pitcher myself, I do try and make sure I've spoken on BBC Radio this year, podcasting today, for example, really narrating different elements of the podcasting industry through my voice, through my writing. It's a fantastic medium to showcase all levels of your abilities, but just make sure that it fully aligns with what you want, the genre of your podcast, the audience of your podcast, the running themes throughout your podcast. Make sure that it aligns fully, because otherwise we always talk about return on investment. You're not necessarily going to get that if you don't do it properly. So due diligence is key, I think. Monetization and protecting your IP. I do wish I'd had more insight into monetization of podcasting. For me, this has become apparent over the last 6 months. I've been podcasting for around 14 months now, so I do wish right at the beginning I had learned a little bit more in terms of brand partnerships, in terms of sponsorships, in terms of ad reads, intro, outro, and what that looks like effectively over the life cycle. At the same time, protecting that. If you're a solo podcaster, if you're a co-host, interview style, making sure that you understand how to protect that, either through contracts. Copyright is standard in the UK, so depending on the jurisdiction, it will change. So wherever you're located in the US, for example, making sure you understand the copyright laws, making sure you understand trademark, what stage of the journey you do that. You, again, need to possibly seek out advice. Obviously, I'm not a legal representative, but it would be worth just having a core understanding of where your current positioning and where you're going. It really emphasized that copyright fine, but trademarking, making sure you protect your podcast. You've worked so hard to put this together, to identify the idea, put it into a concept, record the episode, production, editing, and then you've launched. You want to make sure you protect all of that. So keeping it in mind. And lastly, in the podcast article is my talk, which I gave on the second day of the podcast show. I was a little bit nervous to go on. I think when you're so passionate about what you do, and I'm so passionate about podcasting, I'm so passionate about Take a Chance on You, I really wanted to bring that home. I've been doing it for 14 months. We're transatlantic. We've had US guests join me from New Jersey, New York, LA, but then we've also had guests from Australia, Canada, South Africa, the Caribbean, bringing a level of flavor in terms of business, so B2B, marketing, technology, recruitment, events. We've spoken about media and entertainment, how to pitch yourself, TV. We've had young creatives on as well as thought leaders. It was really bringing that home, how organically, no paid ads, no marketing up until now. When I started networking, it was through that avenue that I was able to pick the first 10 guests and bring them on the podcast by asking them, but showing up persistently, showing up consistently, making sure you have good quality content, even if it's only audio in the beginning. The statistics are showing that more listeners are tuning into audio than video. Video is rising, but the core message was that audio is still very much in play. So good quality audio, grab yourself a mic. There are budget podcasting mics that you can get offline, as well as making sure you get to a studio in person if you can. If you can't, it's absolutely fine, but just doing what works best for you. I brought all of that home in my session, as well as it being very interactive, so passing the mic. I had around 40 people, 10 to 15 questions in total, interactive session, and I absolutely loved it. Like I said, very tired now, coming down, but in the moment, just going back and forth, how to showcase your personal brand as well as your podcast brand, how to combat loneliness, working for time, as well as trying to get your podcast off the ground, how to launch, how to make sure you're getting your core message across on social media, and how to build your in-person community. All of this we spoke about, and it's within the podcasting article, but I will make sure that I put out a few more pieces online. So if you do want to understand more about podcasting, get in touch. I am going to be doing a little bit of coaching for a few people that came up to me and wanted to understand how to launch in June, and I'll try and give back as much as I can through masterclasses, workshops, really coming to the table and seeing what I can do for you, because like I said, it's been 14 months doing well, it's organic. If you can invest in marketing, then of course that is a route forward, making sure you have a strategist who can help you along the way. My preference would be that I would seek out a third party, because not that I don't trust myself, but I would like another opinion, especially now that we're growing. How do we get from A to B? How do we grow? How do we scale? Not wait for permission. I want to say thank you for tuning in today. Obviously, it's a quick mini debrief. All in all, the podcast show is fantastic. Like I said, they are gearing up for 2027. If you do want to get involved in podcasting events, like I said, there's the Podcast Fest London, podcast movement in September. There is the British Podcast Awards as well, taking place later this year, and there's a bunch of podcasting and networking events in London, across the UK and across the pond. There is meetups that you can get involved in, so I will link the resources as much as I can. I will show up for you online and see what I can do to get you podcasting and on your way. Keep up the good work, and we will speak very soon. Bye.